very effective. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for this wonderful panel presentation tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to these guys soon in just a minute because you don't want to hear from me. Take up too much time, but I'm Sterling Wilder, and I'm class of '83. Since class of '85, it's really nice to be 2 years younger. You're hitting that sort of crest of big age birthday. But I'm the director of Alumni Affairs, and I can't thank you all enough for being here and being part of the Women's Forum programming. As a lot of you have been to some of our programs before, and some haven't, but I think that we're in for a real treat tonight, as we always are when we explore different kinds of panels and discussions with Duke women. And just so that you know about how the context of how this fits with other Women's Forum programming is that we have Women's Forum in New York and in DC and in LA. And we just recently, in the last few weeks, launched our Houston program. And in 2 weeks, we'll be launching a Chicago Women's Forum. So there's a lot of desire and need in our counterparts around the country. And so we're actually even doing a little bit of a program in London. I forgot about that. So that's exciting. So, and what we have on campus every other year is an alumni weekend. And so recently in February, we had a program called Money, Sex, and Power, which was the name of a course in women's studies. And there were 300 women and current students, undergraduate and graduate, participating on campus with some terrific alumni speakers as well as faculty members on campus. And the next one will be in February of 2012. So keep an ear out for that. It's a great time to be back on campus and to be with women from all over the country, and then some men. Grateful for Katie's husband. I should refer you by your first name.
Aaron.
Aaron. Aaron.
That was going to be something special.
Who are the two men here? Thank you so much. So again, please let us know if you have any ideas about anything in terms of programming around the world or in New York. And the tagline of the Alumni Association is Forever Duke, because it really is about a lifetime of association. So that's it. I'll sit down. Pam.
Well, no, listen, you said it also. I'm Pam Stone here. I have the privilege of serving with Katie Shaw, with Katie back there, as co-chair of the New York Women's Forum. And it is so much fun to see familiar faces and new faces. And I just think it's so exciting to see the energy that we generate at these events. I want to thank all of you for coming out, and I want to just second what Sterling said, which is we're really always looking for program ideas. You know, as you've noticed, we have always our programs are based around our fabulous alum. And so if you have any suggestions, if you want to serve in any way, shape, or form, please let us know. We do these programs, tend to do one on an academic once a semester, one in the fall and one in the spring. But we also have informal gatherings. Some of you might have attended with Dan Davis organizing lunches or dinners or things like that. So keep an eye out. And we also tonight want to make a special acknowledgement of the help of, where's Rita? Rita Stebbins, who has a member of our executive committee, who has graciously provided this wonderful venue for us. And so thank you so much, Rita. We also want to, Erica Gavin, as all of you know that name, she's always doing so much, but I think she went beyond the call for this particular event. Where's Erica? So big thanks to Erica.
She's out there working.
And we also want to say a big thanks to Sterling Wilder, who has really been a real advocate for women and for bringing issues forward at Duke. And I think we all are probably, committed to that larger goal. So with that, let me say thanks again. Turn the program over to Jack and our fabulous panel.
Okay, thank you so much, Pam. Okay, so I'm Jack Boyd, class of 1985. It's nice to have you in our class, Sterling. The reason I'm here tonight is I'm involved with a great committee that is working on the Duke Alums Engage event for next spring, and we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of the program. But let's get started right now. We ask each of the panelists to tell us a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get started into some questions. We'll have some discussions, and then afterwards we'll have a little time for Q&A. And then following Q&A, we'll have about another half hour at the end of the evening to do a little more mingling and to talk to the panelists one-on-one or amongst each other. Okay? We'll start with Jen.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Goodman-Lynn. I graduated from Duke in 1993 with a psychology major and a marketing and management and film certificate. I, until this January, was running marketing at Nickelodeon in addition to running the charity that I created. And this past January, I made a very big decision to leave my corporate job, and now I am spending all of my time focused on my charity and my health. I unfortunately relapsed with my cancer for the 6th time in January, so it became something I had to spend more time focusing on. And something personal to share, which is very near and dear, I think, to all of our hearts as Duke people, is I've had 6 surgeries over the years, and my 5th surgery was in April, about a week and a half after Duke won the NCAA finals. And my father reached out to Coach K and told him what was going on with me. And I got the most beautiful letter from Coach K in the hospital a week and a half after my surgery, telling me that he could feel my spirit in Indianapolis. He called me on the phone. In fact, this is very funny. When I got home from the hospital, I kept on getting these calls from Duke, and I wasn't answering because I thought they wanted money. And finally, Coach K called my father and said, "Is everything okay? Your daughter's not answering her phone." So my dad didn't want to know that he was calling me, so he said, "Just answer your phone next time." And I was like a teenager in love. I was like, "Coach K?" He called me, and we spoke for about 20 minutes. He sent me a huge care package, and he invited me to be his guest in January to motivate the team before a game. So he is the real deal, and I love that man. So that's a good story.
Katie.
I'm Katie Hood. I am class of 96. Both of us also went to Harvard Business School a couple years apart. And actually, fun fact is both of us were in the same sorority at the same time at Duke. I have been at the Michael J. Fox
80 Pi.
Been at the Michael J. Fox Foundation for 8 years. Came from the business world and went to the foundation. And it's very interesting because I started at Duke Pre-Med, very quickly got blown out of the water, switched to public policy, then worked in business. And if you think about my career now, it's at the intersection of all those things, but I would never, ever have predicted that this is what I would end up doing. So I just think that's an important thing to think about as you think about your career.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm Marina Schreiber, and I went to Duke for business school, so I don't have the same undergrad experience that a lot of you do. I went to Columbia for undergrad, which is a very different place to go to school than Duke, and I really loved my 2 years in Durham. It was a lot of fun. We had a great group of people at Fuqua. I'm the CAO at the I Have a Dream Foundation, which is an educational nonprofit that helps low-income students go to college. And what's kind of unique about our model is we work with the same cohort of students from elementary school all the way through to high school, and then provide tuition assistance for college. So we kind of run the gamut of social supports and academic supports for a long period of time. And now we're actually looking at changing our model because it's proven to be somewhat difficult and problematic, actually, to provide that long-term array of services. And we'll probably talk a little bit about the focus is always on impact in the nonprofit world, which is actually one of the things that kind of surprised me as I moved from for-profit to nonprofit. I guess I thought, oh, it's all about doing good and feeling good and helping people, but there really is a focus on measurement, and I think rightly so. Funders are very particular about metrics and kind of proving your success, and I think that's probably forcing several nonprofits to kind of look at what are they doing, how can they do it better, how can they leverage the dollars that they're being given to reach more children or hit whatever their success factor is. My Duke story is not nearly as dramatic as Jen's, but also involved basketball. Columbia is not known for a sports program, and I'm actually a big sports fan, so I was very excited to go to Duke, and I graduated from Fuqua in '93, so my first year Duke won the second of the back-to-back titles, 91, 92, and my first year I had to go to the bursar's office to probably sign a loan check or something, and Christian Leitner was in the quad right by the chapel, and I swear he looked at me. We had eye contact. And so that was like one of the highlights of my 2 years. I know a lot of people don't
She went on a
like.
date with him.
Oh,
apparently.
really?
Off topic, off topic.
Yes.
So it's good it didn't go anywhere. Just ended at the eye contact.
I would have. I was probably dating him when you saw him.
Okay.
So did not want to talk about that today.
All right. All right. Let's start with some other questioning right now. One of the things when you read the bio for all three of you have worked in for-profit organizations. So the question that I think of is why did you make that move to nonprofit or to mission-driven organizations? What did you think was going to happen? What were your expectations in making that change? Were there any things that happened that you didn't expect, some challenges or even some positives that came out of it? And were there any particular hurdles that you saw because you're a woman making this move to nonprofit from profit? And why don't we start with Katie?
I had always been intrigued. I took classes with Terry Sanford when I was at Duke, and on public-private partnership. Tony Brown, too, was another one of my professors. And I was always intrigued by this idea of efficient nonprofits, and efficient being the, at the time it was nonprofits that operate like businesses, but I don't think that's actually a good, not all businesses are efficient and effective, so you should more just say efficient and effective nonprofits. So I'd always been interested, and I found myself out of college. I went to Goldman Sachs, I worked at Goldman, and I very quickly realized that I wasn't that motivated by either money or perfection in terms of the professional services level of perfection. That I would be doing this work until whatever hour in the morning, and I'd be like, honestly, it probably would have been okay 20% of the project to go. Like, we were there, we were at the answer at 80%, we really didn't need to get to 100%. And I sort of started to realize that what mattered to me was feeling like I was having an impact with individuals and people's lives, but I didn't really know what that meant. I went back to Duke, actually, and worked for a year at Duke, which I loved. But I also realized that there was something about the pace and the urgency of the business world that I missed a lot. So I ended up going back to business school, made an ill-turned foray back into professional services and consulting, realized, what am I doing? And then I just sort of happened upon the Fox Foundation. I knew no one with Parkinson's disease. I thought I was more into, like, I had a dream, the education, social services. Those seemed like issues I could really get my hands around. But when I met with someone at the foundation who basically said, we have one goal, cure this disease. Nobody's been able to cure a disease. Philanthropy hasn't played a big enough role. We have no idea how we're going to get there, but our goal is to get there as quickly as we can and as smartly as we can, and we need more smart people on board to figure out how we're going to do that. I remember I actually called my husband. He was my fiance at the time, and I was like, I think I need to do this. Like, I need to leave Bain and go do this. And his first response was, do you know how many student loans you have? And then his second response was, Michael J. Fox is such a great guy. And so I think that the challenges, I would say, I think it's just as challenging, business or nonprofit. If you're really looking to be at a top-notch A+ organization and run an A+ organization, it's the same challenges. In some ways, I think being a woman is more, it's so much more common in the nonprofit sector. I mean, there's definitely a gender flip. It's like far more common to find women at an organization than men in the nonprofit sector. It is interesting, though, because that reverses itself on boards. So my board is by far men. And I actually think it makes a huge difference to have my Duke education and my Harvard Business School education and my Goldman and Bain education in terms of credibility in their eyes and in my donors' eyes. So I don't think that's necessarily, is it harder or easier to be a woman. I just think it's an interesting, you may be running an organization that's 70% women, but your board, at least my board, is 85% men. So it's just an interesting dichotomy.
Okay. Marina.
So I moved into the nonprofit because I kept having this kind of tug about mission and, what is my work about? And I'm on the operations side of the nonprofit, so I do some of the same boring, necessary things in a nonprofit organization that happens in the for-profit world. I manage finance, I oversee the audit, I manage the benefits and have to deal with rising healthcare costs. I do, the performance review structure and all those things that are not necessarily that exciting, but are important for an efficient organization. So I have an engineering undergrad, and I guess I've always kind of been the number dweeb, and I like operations, I like kind of solving problems. I'm not the external focused person in my organization, I'm internally focused. And it just kind of struck me one day that I really want to be doing those things for an organization that I really believe in, that at the end of the day, certain things have to get done, and I'm happy to do my role. I think I'm good at it, and I like the dweeby side of things, but I'd like my work to kind of matter in a certain way. So I did consulting for many years, and I was more on the implementation side, and I loved it because projects are concrete, and you have this great sense of satisfaction when they're over, and you believe you're making a difference for your clients. And I worked with great groups of very dynamic, brilliant thinkers, and I found that very energizing. But But after 9 years, I kept coming back to that same question of, the healthcare industry, and I was on the payer side, so HMOs and insurance companies, not the most exciting things. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I want to be doing something that means a little bit more. And I kind of segued into the New York City Department of Ed kind of by accident. I didn't apply there. Chancellor Klein had just come in. A friend had passed my resume, unbeknownst to me, to a deputy chancellor, and I got a call. And after talking for a few minutes, I had to say, "How did you get my resume?" And then it all kind of made sense. And I really loved that work. But then I wanted New York City DOE, as many of you probably know, is a huge organization with lots going on. And again, I didn't really see kind of the impact of what I was doing. I knew I was helping, and I did a lot of special projects with the Children First reforms, but I wanted to get a little closer to the work, which is kind of how I ended up at a nonprofit, a smaller organization where I actually see kind of the output of what our program people, who are the brilliant people in our organization that figure out how do we educate kids and how do we deal with all these disparate needs along a very long time frame. And I work with a great talented group of people now, but I guess at the end of the day, it kind of matters to me, what are we accomplishing? What's our metric? And for us, it's educating kids, which is something that's always resonated with me.
Now, Jen, I know your situation is a little bit different, but can you speak a little bit? Maybe
Yeah,
at
no,
least...
absolutely. I always think back to, I think it's Gandhi, what be the change you seek in the world. I was diagnosed 6 years ago with a very rare type of cancer called sarcoma. And I was 33, newly married. This was not supposed to happen. And I was basically told my odds of beating the disease were 50-50, and they still are 50-50, and that there was really no blueprint for how to proceed. And my husband and I started to do research, and we realized that there are, beyond the big four cancers, breast, prostate, lung, and colorectal, every other cancer is considered an orphan cancer. They affect 50% of all people who have cancers, but so little is known about them. And there's so few treatment options because medicine is business. And if pharmaceutical companies don't see money, they're not going to spend billions of dollars developing drugs. And so my husband and I realized there's a need to help. And I think, it's funny, I never would have thought I would have created a nonprofit or run it, but I'm using every single skill I ever learned over my 15 years running marketing organizations and going to business school and being a salesperson. And it's really, really fascinating. So to me, I was kind of propelled to create this. And I remember for me, it was very, very personal. It's funny, there was no business model. It was my husband and I when I was cancer-free for the first time, it tends to come back. I love cycling, and for me, spinning. When I was sick, I loved to work out, and just chemotherapy makes it very hard sometimes to run and do high-impact things. But for some reason, cycling was great because some days I could do low impact, some days I could do high, and it really became therapeutic for me. And I became friends with the instructors at my local Equinox, and we got together and said, let's do something and raise some money. And, I remember thinking, okay, I'll raise $10,000. And lo and behold, my background and 15 years of experience raised $300,000 the first year, and then $700,000 the next year. And we're like, oh God, we're on to something. My husband and I were like, what are we doing? And it was kind of cool because my husband and I have never worked together. We met at business school, and he's more of a finance guy. And it's kind of fun because we're actually a really cute partnership together. We are good partners, but we never would have thought we'd work together. So for me, it got to a point where I'm like, oh my God, this is big. I can't do it myself. And I still at that point wanted to work full time. And so I went to Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is the hospital that treats me, which I believe is doing the best research in the world, and Equinox, which is my gym. And I went to corporate and I pitched them and I said, I don't know if you know, but we've raised $1 million pretty easily. Imagine what we could do if you guys got behind it. So I kind of came up with a great idea and partnered. And what's exciting about that, and I think there are all different ways to get involved in nonprofits, is I'm using leverage and partnerships as a way to build. And what's exciting is we're in year 5 of Cycle for Survival, and we've raised $5 million. And in an environment where most fundraisers are down 10-15% because of the economy, we've doubled, if not tripled, year over year, which is amazing. And it just shows that you don't always have to create something yourself. If you have an idea and you find the right partners that are interested, you can really build and scale very, very quickly. So for me, I never would have told you I'd be here, but there's not one day that goes by that I don't say, oh yeah, that idea that I thought was an impulse, I actually probably learned, when I ran marketing at Ann Taylor, or I was a consultant at McKinsey, or, so that's kind of how I got involved, and it's been fantastic, very rewarding.
Excellent. Okay, so next question, we talked a little bit about, how you found the opportunity. Let's talk a little bit about, was work-life balance important, and has the reality been what you thought it was going to be? And also the cause itself, how much did that play into your decision to make the move that you made? Marina, we'll start with you.
Work-life balance improved in the sense that when I was consulting, I was traveling 4 days a week. And once I moved to DOE, I wasn't traveling anymore, except within the 5 boroughs, which was a lot of fun. But my hours actually are no better. At DOE, it was a time of tremendous change, and Chancellor Klein brought in a lot of for-profit people to work at Tweed, which is where I was based. And people worked really long hours there, and they probably still do. I work for a small nonprofit where I work for the national organization, and then we have affiliates around the country, and the national organization is very lean, and I wear many hats. And my hours are no better than they were in consulting. So in that sense, there really was no trade-off or no improvement. But the reward is I really like what I'm doing. I like what the organization is about, and that makes the hours more attainable, I guess. And I'm forgetting the second part of the question.
The cause itself.
The cause, yes.
I mean, how,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't, there are lots of nonprofits out there in all aspects, arts, environment, health, education, social service. And I'm, not that passionate about the arts. I love to go to different performances, but I don't think I would get the same satisfaction working at an arts organization. I really believe in the mission of my organization. That's very important to me.
Excellent. Katie?
So a couple things about the foundation. So we don't have an endowment, which means we have to raise every dollar every year. So as soon as you're the head of an organization that has to get to $50 million every year, I don't want to say work-life balance goes out the window, but it sort of does, because you're on the road a lot. And when I'm in town, I have 3 little kids, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-month-old. So it's really hard. And I've had to try to teach myself to deal with doing like 75% at everything. Like this whole perfection is the goal doesn't really work. I'm constantly forgetting one thing or another. But it wasn't for me the cause. I didn't know anyone with Parkinson's. My sister has epilepsy. My grandmothers have Alzheimer's. So neurological disease matters to me. But I didn't really realize it at the time. What mattered to me was the kind of organization it was. It was that it was goal-directed. We got to take risks. Time is of the essence. And over the years, I know thousands of people with Parkinson's now. It matters a lot to me. I sometimes say Michael J. Fox is the best thing that happened to Parkinson's disease because he put a face on the disease, but in some ways he's the worst because he's had it for 20 years and he has a slow progressing form of the disease, so people don't really realize how bad it can be, and especially when, some people get diagnosed when they're 30 or 35 or 40 and they progress more rapidly than him, and it's not a pretty picture. So now I'm passionate about the cause. I'm passionate about the way that we can affect and change people's lives if we're successful at what we set out to do, which is very simple. We want new therapeutics. We want them in the short term, and we'll basically try to do whatever it takes to get there. So for me, it wasn't the cause, it was the culture, that sort of no-nonsense, let's just get this done approach. But the cause has become incredibly important to me. Of course, how could it not?
Yeah, for me, the cause is my baby. It's actually like a blessing and a curse. It's great in terms of work-life balance because the team understands when I'm going through treatment, I can only do so much. But I would work on it 24 hours a day if I could because I'm trying to save my life and millions of other people's lives. So I think actually when a patient is the founder of an event, it takes on an interesting course because I drive my team crazy. Like one of the things that is critical to me that will never change is every single penny we raise goes directly to the cause. There's no overhead. And I refuse to ever have overhead because I think we're one of the only charities that can say that. And when there's so many cancer charities out there, I always say if there's one you want to donate to, it's this one because every dollar matters. Well, in order to make that happen, it requires a lot of work. So for me, it's hard because it is my baby. And, my husband and I, a lot of the reason why we went to Sloan Kettering and kind of shared this idea with them in Equinox is because we wanted to create a legacy. Because the reality is my odds are 50-50. And, that's hard to accept. And, I spend a lot of time, we have an amazing executive director who I love. She's like a little sister to me, and she's very it's so important that I trust her. But we spend a fair amount of time talking about how, I can't be too valuable. I am the face of the event, but, and I appreciate that a lot of people love the event because of what I stand for, but it can't be about me, because an event won't, a charity can't continue if it's just one person's face, unless they're a celebrity perhaps. So for me, I think that's very hard. So work-life balance, I don't know where to stop. I mean, I'll work till 10 o'clock at night and not even realize I'm working, because it's my passion, it's my love. And since my husband and I haven't been able to have children, this really is our baby. So
yeah, I would just add to that, because it's interesting. So the Fox Foundation, when I joined, it was 18 months old. And we were really, it's been a blank slate the whole way along. Our model has evolved, and it continues to evolve. I always say, we're really on the right track. We're seeing traction in drug development that we haven't seen before, but we're constantly iterating and saying, this didn't work. We need to just fess up to that and drop that program and move on to XYZ. But it keeps you the level of ownership you feel, that it does become sort of like it is your baby, and you don't, I don't want to say you don't mind working as much, because I think especially in my situation, I really have to try to protect parts of my weekend for my kids so that they don't feel constantly like work is first. But I don't mind working. I mean, let's be clear. It's a job. A job's a job some days, but 90% of the days, it's actually, it's a pretty good job. So, very fulfilled. Yeah, fulfilled.
Okay, let's talk about your leadership style. How has it changed in your mission-driven versus profit-driven life, let's say? Do people react differently to you? In the organization, of course, you're probably hiring different kind of people that are hired in a profit-driven organization. But what about your peers, your colleagues, your family, your friends? How did they react to you as someone who was leading a mission-driven organization versus a for-profit organization? Katie, I'm going to start with you.
Well, before I was the CEO, they used to say, it's so nice that you're doing something good for the world. And now that I run it, they're actually like, whoa, you're running a big nonprofit. That's a big job. I'm like, it was a big job when I wasn't the CEO too. Well, that's all right. So my style has not changed. I mean, one of the strength and weakness of me when I was an analyst at Goldman Sachs is I wear my heart on my sleeve. Everybody knows me very well. I share a lot about me. I try to, it's not deliberate almost. It's just I try to win people over, get them on my team. I'm a team builder. Actually, in our case, we are trying to hire the same people that would be hired in the private sector. We try to make a business of finding those people who have excellent training and experience in the for-profit world and are looking for something different. And we have done it before, and we'll do it again. I always say the day that we stop just hiring raw talent, even if we don't have the right job for them, that's a bad day for us. Because right now, if we hire really smart, motivated people with great training, it's just such a leveraged hire. So my style hasn't changed really at all. If anything, as in this position, as the organization's grown, it's 50 people now, I have to learn to be a little bit more reserved, than I usually am, and really sort of be the boss, so to speak. But I'm never going to be able to do totally that, so it just is what it is.
Marina?
I would say my style hasn't changed. I've always been pretty analytical, and I'm in an analytical role now. In terms of how people respond, at first they were really excited because they knew it was something I'd always wanted to do. Now I think they kind of run away a little bit because I don't know about you guys, but I ask for free office equipment, I ask for donations. Everybody nonprofit is a fundraiser, even if you're not in a fundraising role. So they usually know when I'm calling, in addition to finding out how are you, that I might have something up my sleeve. We need tutors, we need mentors. What are you doing on Saturday? So they were very excited in the beginning, and now they're a little scared sometimes.
I actually, it's interesting. I think my style has changed, but I learned something that I wish I learned years ago, because I think it really would have benefited me in the corporate world as well, is, I don't know where I got this from, but, I felt like I grew up vulnerability is not a good thing in the workplace, and the more senior you get as a woman and you manage big teams, you can't be vulnerable. You've got to be strong and push, and, I think that's so wrong. And I actually think when you show your vulnerability, as long as you show that you have a plan, people really love that because they relate to you. You're human, and work is all about inspiring people, and that's how you sell people on things, that you inspire them and they want to be part of your team. And I think I think once I got sick, I slowly but surely became much more open with my disease because I really believe that I might have cancer, but cancer doesn't have me. And I found that I was just so much more successful when I took that on and I took that attitude on. And I became just a really good salesperson. And I think it's just because I was in new business positions my whole life and I was always selling, but maybe it wasn't something I really, really believed in. And, it was interesting because I joke around that over the past 5 years, I've probably asked thousands of people to either donate, participate, get involved, and only one person has ever said no. It was in year one when I asked a nail salon to donate a free $7 manicure, and they went out of business 2 months later. So I think there's something about maybe, I don't know, I think women sometimes feel, at least I did, that you can't be soft, because if you're soft, you're ineffective. And I actually find that when I go into a meeting, the more I open my heart and the more I really share what's going on with me and what inspires me and why I do this, it's like people connect and they want to do it. People just want to be with you. And it's funny because, my friends, I've been so humbled by the fact that everyone wants to get involved. It never feels awkward or weird asking for the request because I believe in it so much. And people rise to the occasion. I mean, if you have considerations, people will see them. But if you don't have considerations and you say, you know what, I really want your help, can you do this for me? It's amazing what you can get. I mean, it really is. So to me, I think I learned just such a lesson. And if you really believe in something, you owe it to yourself to let people know because they will follow. They really will follow.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We might use that tale about the nail salon and our fundraising for Duke Alumnae Engaged. Julie, did you get that? Okay, good.
And then I don't answer the phone when Duke calls.
Yes. I think that was me calling, by the way. But that's okay. Okay. Let's talk about the last 2 years and the economic climate and the impact that's had on you and the things you've had to do to deal with that. And how have you responded to this challenge in ways that are maybe different from your colleagues who work in for-profit driven organizations? And Marina, we're going to start with you.
Well, the last 2 years have been tough from a fundraising perspective, and we've also been trying to work on this new model. And it's been a very difficult time to kind of sell something new to funders, I think in general. And then because we're kind of repositioning our program, it's been particularly hard for us. There's just hasn't been a lot of new money out there. So to motivate the team, because a lot of us actually came in under a new president with the idea that we were going to move in a slightly new direction, we've not made the progress we wanted to make. So we spent a lot of the past 2 years kind of, celebrating the successes we are making, positioning for a new model that we're hopeful we will be able to launch in September. And then trying to preserve, all the capital that we had. I think one thing that might be a little different than for-profit, and it's probably due to the fact that we're also a small organization, is everybody kind of pitched in with ideas for, saving precious budget dollars. So when it came time to look at our benefits, where we fall into the small group model, so we're community rated, so it's not like we can negotiate with carriers what kind of plan we have. We're presented, Oxford will give us these 5 options, and Empire Blue Cross will give us these. So we brought it to the team. We had a 17% rate increase, I think, for 2010, and we couldn't afford it. So we just asked the team, what's more important to you? Smaller copay or drug coverage? And, collaboratively, we kind of ended up voting on what our health options would be for the year. So that's probably due to our size, maybe due to the fact we're a nonprofit. We elected to run a deficit for our FY10 and preserve people's jobs because it was important to us to keep our folks on board, and we of course had to get approval from our board to do that. We had a bit of an operating reserve, and so we deliberately made that decision. For-profit organizations may not have, I don't know, but there's a couple things I think of. So really working collaboratively. We're very big on recycled paper, so these were Jack's questions and my little cheat sheet, and, we print everything on our scrap paper. We do everything we can, and it's amazing. It does kind of make a difference. It adds up over the course of a year, so.
Yeah, I would just say quickly, like I said before, something's in our water, and I don't want to jinx it. We are, actually, let me explain. We're an event, which is very different than an organization. So our event is a 4-hour cycling relay where friends and family get on a bike, at an equinox, and you share a bike for 4 hours and raise money for cancer research. And we do it in various markets across the country. So it's very different than an ongoing organization. The great thing is between a partnership with the hospital and the gyms, we're able to keep our costs really, really low. But what's amazing, I mean, this is like my favorite little chart, is like every year we've grown 100%, which is amazing. You know, it's obviously going to change as our numbers get higher, but I think what's interesting, which I've learned, is that people are so worried about the economy. What we tend to do is the metric that I believe in the most is retention. And it's funny, I actually prioritize retention over dollars, because I do believe what I look at every year is who's coming back. And what's unbelievable about our event is as we grow, 80% of the people who participate year over year. And to me, that says something, that they have such a great consumer experience that they want to keep coming back. And that's what we focus on, because I find that if you focus on retention, the money comes. And rather than ask to raise a ton of money, the requirement is it's $1,000 minimum a bike. So 4 people on a bike, that's $250. Who can't raise $250? But what we do is we make it fun. We have great incentives along the way. And the average bike last year raised $4,000, not one. So I look at it as keep the bar low, and then it's up to the team to figure out creative ways to keep you excited and to keep you coming. But I don't know, we're really lucky we keep on growing. So it's bittersweet because it means people realize that there's a real need for this. But we have not been touched by the economy. I'm scared to say that, but it's been great.
Yeah, we've also been pretty fortunate. I always say that I think that when you have Parkinson's, it doesn't go away during a recession. So if it's in your family and you care, or you have it, or your family cares about it, it's still going to be one of your top charities. So it's bittersweet. You wish that it wasn't, but it is. So that's part of it. I think, though, that it's really interesting because we really didn't know what was going to happen. We have gotten incredibly mission sharp over the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years, where the evolution of the organization, we are much better at talking about the impact we're having, at moving things from phase to phase of research in a way that our donors can understand. And I think we were just coming to that as the downturn hit, which was incredibly fortunate timing at getting better at talking about what we do in a meaningful way. So I feel like our donors, we're 75% major gifts funded. It's a very unusual model. So that means gifts over $2,500 a year. And that is a market that was very questionable about what was going to happen there. And what we made different decisions in different parts of the business. There was one event in particular where a lot of the traditional supporters of that event we knew had been hurt by the Madoff scandal, so we canceled the event. Just let's not even go there. Let's not go to that community. They've supported us generously over the years. Let's not do this, right? And then in other areas, I think we sort of dug in deeper. So Team Fox is our community fundraising arm that is actually relatively new. But basically, if you want to do something for Parkinson's research, you can decide whatever you want to do. If you want to throw a cocktail party, if you want to do a bike race, if you want to run a marathon, if you want to do pancakes for Parkinson's, you decide where you are and make the most of it. And again, it's like timing is amazing. That whole spirit of yes, we can really hit right when all the bad stuff was going on, but people really felt like I can do this in my community. And I think that you're seeing growth too, because it's something tangible people can do. And the one thing we've seen I totally agree with the retention metric. In our case, if you're a Team Fox member and you do an event 1 year and then you do it the second year, the growth in your fundraising for that event is unbelievable, because you're now a community event and your community comes out and they want to come out, and it's an incredibly powerful thing. So that piece of our business was growing as some of the others were not. We also had a very, very frank discussion with our board about and made a conscious decision to invest through the downturn. So we felt like we were really on the cusp of a lot of impact, and our goal is to go out of business. I don't think I said that at the beginning. Like, that's part of the most compelling part of the message to me was our goal is once we cure this disease, we're gone. And that really affects your thinking about what you should do when something like this happens. Well, clearly, if our goal is to go out of business because we've cured the disease, we have to continue investing. Because why would we stop? Just what are we trying to preserve? Our goal is to get to a cure as quickly as possible. So we invested specifically in our program team, which you said earlier, it's sort of the heart of the organization. That's where a lot of your impact's going to come from. Now we're paying the price a little bit now. the organization is taxed on on development and communications and all these things because we've been rather lean on that front. But I think all of these things sort of play together so that we actually have had growth all of the last couple of years, which is good.
Okay, we're going to open up to some questions now. So, okay.
I'm Tina Myers, class of 94. I can start off by saying you are all so inspiring, and it's just a thrill to hear you speak. I'm on the committee, and we've had a ton of events, and I'm just so engaged right now, so thank you. And if you wouldn't have on my own, part of what we're all talking about. My career is in the entertainment business, very for-profit oriented, and I do a lot in the nonprofit sector as a volunteer and things that I owe my time to. I always wonder professionally, and for me as a woman, I feel like I've kept away from the nonprofit, because my passion is in entertainment, which is obviously profit oriented, but needing to somehow, and I'm single, I'm not married, needing to somehow sort of put myself in a more financially oriented accomplishment arena than the nonprofit world. And obviously, at all of your levels, you're earning significantly and you're contributing significantly. Is that ever something you considered in your, and being MBAs and all of that in your drive and your goal setting, and how do you reconcile sort of, because they're two very different worlds, so how do you kind of reconcile living in one over the other?
I get paid nothing now. It's funny because actually,
Well, you have a husband, that helps.
well, I was going to say, but that was like a big conversation. I'm very fortunate that I'm in that position that we can do it. But it's interesting because when I decided to leave Nickelodeon, and I can talk to you a lot about how I think in entertainment you can bring philanthropy to entertainment because I think it's ripe, and I think so many people are doing great jobs of it. But you know, it's interesting because I got a lot of calls. You know, it's funny. I'm always flattered when I get calls from headhunters who, like, I was asked to be the chief marketing officer of the one organization, and I was like laughing, like me. I'm like, this is like I think of this as so personal. I never think that people are looking from the outside and like, who's running this thing? You know, it's just funny. But for me, it's weird for me to ever think about doing anything else other than what I created. But you know, it's interesting because I've thought about like, well, you know, right now my husband and I have decided it's more important for me to focus on my health. But at some point, you know, it will be nice to make an income again. It's if ego, if nothing else, it just feels weird to have had a big job and a big salary and not. But I also think that there are a lot of ways around that. Like what I started to do is I started to be a paid motivational speaker, and you know, it's actually a lucrative business if you have the time. Right now, I'm not really doing it, but I think there are a lot of ways for you to take philanthropy and figure out a way to make money, but yet still do what you want through it. But you know, unfortunately, I am not getting paid. You guys have a job. I'm just a slave to curing cancer.
I mean, there's no doubt. If I really look back to where I was, the fact that I was marrying somebody who the whole reason we were in this town is because he wanted to work in finance, which was like when we first started dating in business school. One of my friends who'd known me for a long time said, "You're going to marry this guy." I was like, "No, I'm not. He wants to be a banker and he wants to live in New York. That is so not me." But it was very clear that was going to be a backup. Now I'll tell you though, a lot of the women I work with are single, so there's a lot and have come from. So one of my head of events and Team Fox actually came from Entertainment Weekly, and what I will say is I do think that if you can succeed in the nonprofit world, you can do well. I mean, not, you know, again, 90% of our dollars goes right to research and research program. I'll be really clear. You're not in, and I could make a lot more money working at a company. There's no doubt, but I do think that it's the opportunity for impact. That almost seems a little cliche. It's also the opportunity if you are really motivated, smart, hardworking, all these things. I don't want to say, I just want to say there's a unique value to that combination of skills in the nonprofit world, and all of a sudden you have a lot more ability to really create. So that whole piece of your psyche that's about that, in a corporate world, you don't get the opportunity to create all the time. Sometimes you do, you know, but a lot of time you just have to do what you need to do for your job. And there's definitely, for me at least, the opportunity to create almost carries a financial weight to me. And in terms of my own identity, seeing myself, I never would have seen myself as an entrepreneur ever. If you had told me that I would work at a startup and grow it to whatever, I would have told you were crazy. But being an entrepreneur is not just about having a big idea, it's about being able to sort of grow and build on that idea. And there's a huge satisfaction that comes for me out of that I never knew when I was thinking about the switch. I saw the switch as business or nonprofit. I didn't see it from a what skills am I going to be calling on and what new things that I don't see now am I going to see.
For me, the move was very personal. At the end of the day, I just wanted to really believe in, the end product of the organization I work for. I make an okay salary, not what I made when I was consulting, but I bought my apartment when I was consulting. So now I just have to worry about the maintenance and the ongoing mortgage, not the down payment. So I actually put a few things in order before I made that leap. I was not married when I went to DOE. I'm married now. So I did think about it. And one of the reasons why it took me so long to make the leap, because it was something that was tugging at me ever since I was an undergrad, really, was I had to make sure my financial house was in order so that I could afford to do it. So it was a consideration there. In terms of your passion, I'm a big believer in that, do what you love to do. And if you love entertainment, absolutely, you should do it. And, that's fabulous. And yeah.
I believe if you love something, you'll make money out of it. I really do. I don't know anyone who hasn't really loved something that figured out a way to make it work for them. I even think now, it's funny, I've changed. I'm like, okay, so when I go back and I want to make a salary, I don't need as much as I made before. It's funny how you change. It's like, well, I also find that there's so much less bureaucracy in nonprofit. I don't know, working in big companies like Viacom and other where it's very political. I found myself in meetings all day where we were sweating the small stuff. And for someone who's gone through something traumatic, I'm sure everyone in life has an experience where I can't believe we're spending time talking about this. This is ridiculous. And I get very impatient now when anything isn't moving the needle because I know more than anyone every day matters. So for me, it's just refreshing to be able to come into work and actually make something happen. It's wow. Yeah.
I'm sitting, I'm actually super proud as well, and I've met on the phone with two of you about all your work in nonprofits. It's very inspiring, in fact. Probably one of the reasons I'm here today. But I'm just curious, when you talk about you don't take a Jen particularly, but all of you, okay, I don't take a salary 90% of my or 100% of my funds go to the organization. How do you think that would change your face to the community if you did take a small stipend salary or whatever? And personally, I work for a nonprofit. I'm doing development consulting. The artistic director doesn't take a salary, and she's there twice as many hours or more than I am, and her organization, she believes it. I'm just wondering from your perspective, does that actually change your pitch or your sell to the outside world?
No, I think for me, it's different. To be clear, Sloan Kettering officially owns Cycle for Survival now. I am a volunteer. I am the face of the event. I am the founder of the event. I am the fundraising of the event. So I'm very involved. We have a team of people, and believe me, they get salaries. What we've done is, and this is one of the benefits of leveraging, is there are lots of different pots where money is at Sloan Kettering. So believe me, there is overhead. It's just we've been able to siphon it out so that 100% of the money that people raise goes to research.
So maybe Sloan Kettering takes the salary.
Right.
Right, and I have had conversations with them. I do not want a salary from them. I think it would be a breach of interest. I think it would be a conflict of interest because then I would be an employee of Sloan Kettering as opposed to the founder of this event. So I would never take money from them. I would absolutely do other things on the side if I needed to make money, which is what I'm doing. I'm kind of building my own brand, which frankly helps the charity. But no, believe me, we absolutely have costs. It's just, one of the benefits of, my husband and I had a decision a few years ago. Do we create our own 501c3, which frankly we had no idea what we were doing, or do we go to someone and the truth is Sloan Kettering is the best cancer center in the world. They have databases of millions of people. Why would we recreate the wheel when at the end of the day as a patient all I want to do is get as much traction as possible? So we just made the choice of we have no ego. We don't care about our own charity. But no, I would not take a salary, but it's very accepted and, it's expected, obviously, for people to take salaries. In fact, the Pan Mass Challenge, which is an event that I always look at, which is fantastic. It's a outdoor bike ride in Boston that benefits Dana-Farber. They've raised $30 million a year. They are fantastic. The creator of, his name is Billy Starr, he makes over $1 million a year, and he's very open about it. Now, he's got a big ego, and he's like, look, I grew this event from nothing to $30 million. He deserves to make, I mean, as long as he can keep growing the event, power to him. It's just in my situation, it wouldn't be right for me to take a salary.
We're gonna take a couple more questions. Jessica, you had a question, and then we'll go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jessica Worth, class of '09, so I'm new to all of this. I doubt that I was the only Duke student who graduated in the Great Recession who stumbled upon nonprofits just out of not knowing where to go. And it's been really a phenomenal experience, the organization I'm at. Really great learning opportunity, and I've grown a lot and developed a lot. But one of the things that I've noticed is that while our organization is predominantly women, they max out at maybe the associate director level, and there really are very few women in president, C-level. There isn't really that role model out there, and so this has been just truly wonderful to hear you guys and hear what you've had to talk about. But I just sort of wonder, what kind of advice you have for someone who's just starting off on this path, and now I think this is what I want to do for the long haul, and who would have thought? So just your tidbits, your pearls of wisdom.
I mean, my senior leadership team is 5 women and a man. So we always say, as our senior leadership team sometimes like devolve into, I don't know, some talk that's more female gender, then we look at him and he's just like, keep going. Finish it up. But I think that for me, it's about, if I were going to give advice now, I would say, I actually think an MBA can be hugely helpful in the nonprofit sector, and I know there's lots of other degrees that could be helpful too, but I find that training and that discipline really gives you a skill set that people really respect, whether it be donors or board, or even just it's not just the pedigree, it's the management training on running an organization. And I feel like if you have that skill set, it really helps. I also you should just find as many mentors as you can. And not mentors where it may just be informational interviews with as many people as you can talk to, because everybody has a different path. Like I say business school, I went to business school. I mean, other people have different paths and different tricks that have worked for them. But I do think, one of the things about the Fox Foundation is we came out of the gates and said, who can we learn from? And I swear it helped us accelerate our own progress as an organization to actually say, what can we learn from cystic fibrosis? What can we learn from JDRF? And the same thing applies as an individual, is what can you learn from people who've sort of gone down this road before? And people are always happy to talk about themselves. So, and you'll learn something in the process. So.
All right. Okay. Anyone else want to respond to that?
No, I thought that was good.
No, I agree. I would agree that I think, as you said, I think you're dealing with clients a lot too. So you have to always remember not just what, who are the people that you're trying to sell to, and having a common language with them is important. But I think also, I really do think, and I think Katie has alluded to it too, it's running a nonprofit is really like running a business, and to run a business you need to have a little bit of everything. So be open-minded. I don't think I would be as successful today without every single job I had along the 15 years, even waitressing. It sounds silly, but I think that's what's exciting about nonprofits is you can really leverage a lot more of your skills. So be open-minded, take every opportunity, even if it's not specific to nonprofit. Don't necessarily think that the skills that you're not going to use there won't be tremendously helpful down the road.
One of the things I found very amusing about this area that Katie talked about, which I hadn't really thought about before, is that nonprofits are pretty well known are pretty women heavy in terms of management. But I hadn't really thought about how boards, especially prestigious and prominent boards, are still very male heavy. So I guess I have 2 things. Is that largely because they're funded? And second of all, if you're chatting with your husband after a board meeting, what do you say? I mean, do you get frustrated by it? Do you ever think about how can we bring more women? It's kind of crazy. The organization's run by women, but or kind of go another level on all of that.
Well, one thing we've been trying to do for the past several years is diversify our board. It is very white male, men of a certain age, men that have time, because our board is very active. It's more than just attending meetings. We have pretty active committee structure, and we do rely on their counsel quite a bit. So they tend to be men that have been very successful and that now are either part-time in their corporate roles or maybe have retired fully. Several of them also tend to have sponsored our programs because a lot of I Have a Dream programs were sponsored by individuals or families or groups of individuals. That's how they kind of connected to the board. And so it's really been an effort the past 3 years to get people of color, to get women, to get diversified ages. And our board was a little resistant because it does become kind of a family of sorts. They all get to know one another. But we knew we made progress at our last board meeting where we had a few Dreamer alumni come and talk about the experience. And we're trying to really engage our alumni. We've been around for 30 years. And so our oldest classes are now people in their early 40s, late 30s. And we'd love to recruit them to be board members and donors, which we have not been very good at doing. And so one of our board members, after hearing these two people come and speak about their experience, said, you know what, we need an alum on the board, which, we've been kind of pushing that, but for him to say it made all the difference in the world. So we're trying. It's something we'd like to do because we'd also like different voices around the table. One of the challenges that I didn't think about it when we had the question is it's very emotional work, the work that my organization does, and people feel very strongly about it. And the long-term commitment is actually one of the things that attracted me about the organization because very few organizations work with a cohort of children for 10, 12 years. And now at the organization, I realize why that's so rare because there are many, many challenges with that. And we've been trying to get our board to kind of look at things a different way. And one of the things that surprises us after meetings is these really tough businessmen that have been very successful, some entrepreneurial, some in corporate sector. It seems like they check their analytical hat when they come to a board meeting, and it's much more about the heart for them. And so as we try and have these discussions about we need a new model and we need to approach it this way and this is how we're going to market it, it's almost like they recoil and like, well, what do you mean? We're just helping kids and that's what it's all about. And we're like, well, but are we helping them in the best way and, using the dollars the most appropriate way and that type of thing. So that was really eye-opening for me. And I think maybe diversity on a board would help with those discussions too.
My board is not very emotional. I actually thought she was going to say, I actually think that we have to be very analytical in how we talk to the board. And when I make a presentation, it is about measuring the impact, showing what we're doing, talking about who we're collaborating with in pharma and why, how many drugs are in the pipeline. But my board is a little different, and I think it's awesomely different in the fact that everybody is mid-career in very successful careers, so they do not have the time to micromanage.
Right.
What they want to do is hire very competent people to run the show. So they actually, it's nice. They are all guys, but they're involved knowing that they don't want to be running the nonprofit, and that applies to Michael too. I mean, Michael has a big role in it, but he's also writing books, acting, speaking, and he has 4 kids, and it's like, okay, so this is the team we're going to entrust. So I think that makes a big difference. What I was responding to is it shocks me in the nonprofit world, and I would just like everybody should just noodle on this. The people who have the biggest capacity to give don't use the same investment criteria they make when they're making money, and they should. They should look more for ROI. They should look more for payoff. They should look more for impact. At least it's my strong bias, clearly. But if you think about what the power of philanthropy could be, putting that mindset in the nonprofit sector, I think, is incredibly important.
Hi, Monica Ward, 96. I guess my question is, in the nonprofit world, I've worked in a lot of the strategic planning efforts, both pre-economic crisis and post. And I think, Marina, to your point, what I'm hearing, the changing of the models, I think is what a lot of nonprofits are going through right now. And I guess it's some helpful advice in thinking through that strategy as to how do you change your model without losing sight of your mission and still being able to talk to the impact that you want to speak to and not just what the next funding source is speaking to.
We were fortunate. We work with Bridgespan, which is a great resource for anyone thinking about the nonprofit sector to go on their website. They call them bridgers, people that move from for-profit to nonprofit, and lots of good stuff. So They have a consulting arm, and they worked with us to help us kind of structure it. And in hindsight, we worked with them too soon because then we had this board issue. Like, we kept thinking the board was aligned, and then we kept realizing meeting after meeting that the board wasn't quite aligned. And so I wish we could actually bring them in now where we've kind of moved much further along. And I wish I actually don't have a great answer for you because I don't think we approached it quite the right way. You know, we have a founder, a very dynamic founder, who's not intimately involved with the organization, but his legacy lingers. I think for us, we really should have engaged him a lot sooner to really help move our board along. And we kind of brought in a dynamic leader who was brought in to shake up the organization, but then in the end, people weren't so sure they wanted it shaken up. So I think in hindsight, we would have approached things a lot different. You really need to build alignment on your board to make a dramatic change, and I don't think we were as successful at that as we would have liked. But we're getting close now.
I was just going to say, I feel like, you know, this should always be the case, but when the economy is bad, it's even more so. Your positioning has to be crystal clear. It has to be niche. It has to be distinctive. You have to be able, anyone on your team has to be able to explain what are the 2 or 3 reasons why you're distinctive than anyone else. And if you look at your statement and you can't tell who you are, you're never going to succeed whether the economy is good or bad. And when the economy is bad, you're really not going to succeed. So I feel like, you know, that's really, unfortunately, I think when the economy is bad, a lot of organizations who, frankly, were lucky that they were doing good when the economy was good, realize, oh, God, you know, we sound like everyone else out there. And I think that's the challenge, is how are you distinctive? What can you say that no one else can say so that you can feel very comfortable saying this is the one reason why you should be investing in ours?
I think my one learning in the sector is that too many nonprofits operate in a vacuum, where it's about their efforts and their impact and their communities and what they're doing, but are they looking at what other people are doing in the same space? Because it's very difficult to find a unique niche if you haven't done your landscape assessment, is what we call it. So it became very clear to us how our model needed to evolve when we literally went through the exercise of categorizing every NIH grant in Parkinson's disease and every industry program as much as we could. And we realized there's basic research here, there's clinical research here, and there is no bridge in the middle. Mm-hmm. It becomes very clear that that's where our efforts need to be. And then the rest follows, because you are sort of, it felt like, I talk about the evolution of our activities, but really I talked about mission sharp. We just keep getting sharper and sharper and understanding the landscape, and I think it's an exercise that's sometimes because ego, and I don't mean ego in a bad way, but there are frequently founders and strong personalities who've gotten something up the ground and going, and the nonprofit success is as much about that as it is the bottom line of the impact. And as soon as that starts to get muddled, I think you start to go down. So I think the recession is actually forcing a lot of organizations to look at this in the face. And the hope is just that people aren't slashing off their limbs, you know, to save costs so much that they actually gut their ability to sort of really, you know, refine and sharpen the organization. And I think time will tell on that front.
Yeah, just one thing to add. You know, organizations that have been around a long time, you know, landscapes change, and I think some nonprofits haven't kept up with the changes. So in our particular case, we're an educational support organization, and, you know, school systems have changed. Charter schools are now very big. You know, education reform is a term that didn't exist when Jean Lang, you know, founded I Have a Dream. And, you know, people sometimes get complacent about the old way of doing things, and you really do need to keep current and look at, as you said, what's around, and then what is your role in that changed landscape. And for people that are very emotionally connected to work, that can be a difficult thing to kind of step back and say, you know what, we can't be all things to all kids for 10 years. We need to really focus on this, and we're still being true to our mission. It's just we're going to execute it in a different way. And it's been a fascinating journey for me as part of this, and I think we're getting close to the end of the journey. So.
Does anyone else feel like they want to run out and join a nonprofit? Thank you very much. Very, very inspiring, very informational, and just so happy to get to meet all of you. It's been terrific.
Thanks.
Thank you. Wait, shameless plug, since I'm an event and not an
Well,
organization.
Yeah,
February 13th and 14th, New York, Long Island, San Francisco's March 5th. There are cards out there. I have cards here. I would love to
yes,
have you guys.
there is information available, not only for everyone. Everyone brought some
these
information about their
Donate to
organization.
these organizations.
One of the other things that we do have is information about the Duke Alums Engage event coming up on April 30th. We have been working on this for almost 5 months. We have a lot more work to do, but what we're doing, we're creating a community health and fitness day in Harlem with the Children's Aid Society at the Dunleavy Millbank campus. There are several components to this event. We're going to be offering medical screenings, basic medical screenings, to approximately 400 people in the community, both adults and children. We're going to be offering fitness, information and fun, interactive ways to learn about nutrition, ways that people can learn about quitting smoking and diagnosing their children's behavioral problems and things like that. We're also working on a very big project, a very ambitious project to create a community fitness room at Dunleavy Millbank. We already have 22 people on our executive committee. One person was added yesterday, by the way, for those of you keeping track. And we have an advisory council of 7 people, and we're still looking for more people to be involved with us in a lot of different ways. And I'm very happy to talk to any and all of you about the ways that you can be involved, whether you want to be involved just on the day or want to be involved a few days between now and then, or if you want to be crazy like many of the people here and commit a lot of your time. In fact, I would like for all the Duke Alums Engage committee members to please stand up so when we go back to the reception, people can see Kristen and Aaron and Julie and Erica, and and there's a lot of people here.
Can you also have Lisa Field talk about her program in Connecticut?
Yes, Lisa.
Last year we did a partnership with Person to Person, which is a local organization that does food, clothing, emergency assistance. And what we did is we gathered about 75 alumni in the area. Our New York crowd came and joined us. We did 75 Thanksgiving baskets for the clients of Person to Person, and we'll be doing it again on Saturday. I know we moved everything to spring, but everyone had a great time, so we decided to just go ahead and do it.
All right.
So we're doing it again on Saturday at 10 to 12. This Saturday, yes, tomorrow. And then we'll be Person to Person in Darien. Yeah. On the post road, right behind St. Luke's Church. And then in the spring, we'll be doing something on April 30th. I think we'll continue a partnership with Person to Person, but
very good, thank you. One other note, and I think you're going to say some wrap-up words, Pam? Okay. The name tag, we are going to recycle. So please leave those on the table when you're leaving. We would like to be friendly to the environment in every little way that we can, Pam.
Well, all I'm going to say is that thanks to every chance we have, more reception, and so let's the conversation continue. I know all of them our great panelists will be ready to tell you more about their organizations, and again, thanks for coming.